Imagine a person standing in a multi-million-dollar penthouse, wearing a tailored suit, surrounded by the absolute peak of modern technology. Now, watch as they completely lose their temper, screaming and hurling a glass across the room over a minor inconvenience. Contrast that image with an ascetic or a member of a remote tribal community. They might live in mud huts, eat off leaves, and lack modern conveniences. Yet they navigate their community with quiet empathy, restraint, and a steady sense of dignity. This contrast creates a friction in how we view human progress. Physical wealth and advanced technology do not automatically yield a refined human being. It forces us to ask what metric we are actually using to measure our advancement. To solve this, the poet Ramdari Singh Dinkar divided human progress into two categories. The first is sabhyata, or civilization. This represents the physical infrastructure we accumulate, the cars, the skyscrapers, the clothes we wear, and the roads we build. And the second is sanskriti, or culture. This is the internal refinement we inhabit. It is the grace in our manners, the mastery of our impulses, and the empathy we extend to others. Dinkar summarizes the divide with a simple distinction. Civilization is what we have. Culture is what we are. Confusion between the two leads to a critical error. We assume that upgrading our physical tools automatically upgrades our humanity. But civilization is just the equipment. Culture is the internal software that determines how we actually use it. These two forces aren't completely isolated. Culture often dictates how civilization takes shape. The bricks and steel of a house are civilization, but the aesthetic taste that decides the architecture is a direct expression of culture. Dinkar compares civilization to a glass of milk, and culture to the rich butter hidden within it. You cannot see the butter by looking at the surface, yet it is the invisible essence that permeates the entire liquid. Because it is purely physical, civilization is vulnerable. Buildings can be demolished and wealth can be acquired in a single day. Culture, however, cannot be purchased or built overnight. It requires centuries of continuous shared habits to form. True human refinement is the slow accumulation of a society's lived experience. You can gather all the gadgets of the modern world in a lifetime, but you cannot force the growth of centuries of collective grace. To understand why culture takes so long to build, we have to look at the baseline of human existence. Dinkar calls this prakriti, our nature, or our raw biological instinct. This baseline is volatile. It consists of the deep-seated impulses hardwired into us: anger, greed, lust, and jealousy. If humans only act on these impulses, we remain indistinguishable from animals. Dropping a layer of technological civilization on top of these instincts does nothing to change them. A person driven by raw greed remains a servant to their nature, no matter how advanced their tools are. This is where culture performs its primary function. It is the active mastery of these natural impulses. It ensures that anger and greed remain under our control, rather than the other way around. In this framework, the refinement of a society is measured by the degree to which its people have mastered their own animal instincts. Physical civilization has a hard limit. At death, our connection to our wealth and property is severed. Those things stay behind. Culture, however, acts as an enduring attribute of the human soul. The art, philosophies, and manners we cultivate leave a lasting imprint on the generations that follow us. The values we hold and the habits we practice become a generational legacy. This shared consciousness outlives any physical monument we could build. If culture is the delicate soul of a society, it might seem logical to guard it heavily. One might think a society should isolate itself to protect its internal values from outside corruption. Dinkar warns that this leads to kupmandukta, the state of a frog in a well. The frog assumes its small, isolated world is the entire universe, safe but stagnant. A culture that stops absorbing from the outside eventually dries up. When a society only gives and refuses to take, it faces inevitable intellectual stagnation. For a culture to survive, it requires a constant, flowing exchange across borders. When different societies collide, they force new ideas into the stream. True cultural strength is not achieved through isolation, but through a constant openness to outside influence. These historical collisions often result in significant cultural advancements. The arrival of Islamic influences in India, for example, led to the birth of the Urdu language and the distinctive fusion found in Mughal art. Later, contact with European scientific thought acted as a catalyst, changing how Indian thinkers approached physical science and social law. This intellectual contact produced reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, whose work began to dismantle long-standing social hierarchies using the lens of modern thought. The continuity of this awakening reached thinkers like Swami Vivekananda, who took this synthesized philosophy and presented it to the global stage. This process highlights a defining characteristic of Indian identity that Dinker calls samasik sanskriti, or composite culture. A composite culture is the capacity to absorb, digest, and harmonize diverse influences into a single shared identity. The ultimate goal of human development is not found in building an impenetrable fortress of civilization, but in cultivating an open-source soul capable of integrating the entire world.